This podcast is solely for the attention of institutional, professional, qualified, or sophisticated investors and distributors.
Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about a particular form of digitization, e-commerce. Everybody knows that e-commerce was already accelerating significantly before the pandemic. In 2019, online sales at the global level were close to $2 trillion, the largest market being China, followed by the US and Japan. If we take the example of the US, online retail sales were up almost 16% year-on-year in the fourth quarter of 2019, while overall retail sales were up by less than 4%. Online sales were very dynamic, and the share of online sales in total retail sales was constantly increasing. The same type of evolution could be noticed in the Eurozone, in UK, or in China. Everybody knows as well that e-commerce has accelerated very strongly during the pandemic due to the various restrictions and to the limitation of social interactions, whether voluntary or not. Many papers have been written on this topic in the press, but also by economists. But one big question is whether this shock of digitization has permanently changed consumption habits. It turns out that an IMF working paper has just been published on this topic and provides a global overview since it covers 47 countries and uses all the transactions carried out in the MasterCard network between January 2018 and September 2021. Note that the authors of the study had data for more than 200 countries, but chose to limit their study to the 47 countries for which MasterCard had significant market shares for debit and credit cards. One of the advantages of this study is the fact that the authors had access to the breakdown by sector for all transactions. The authors of the study reached 5 key findings. First of all, there is a very strong heterogeneity among countries in the use of e-commerce in terms of levels and trends. In particular, the authors looked at the differences between the share of sales made online in September 2021 and that which would have prevailed if the pre-crisis trends, which means the trends of 2018 and 19, had persisted. For half of the countries, this share was in September 2021 higher than the pre-crisis trends, and among them some heavyweights such as India and Brazil. But for almost all developed countries, the share of online sales was roughly back to its pre-crisis trends. A second finding of the study is that the digital gap between countries has increased during the health crisis. The share of online sales in total sales has increased the most during the worst part of the health crisis, for countries where it was already high. A third finding is that the increase in the share of transactions carried out online was largely transitory. When we aggregate the data from the 47 countries, we see that the share of online sales, after having climbed sharply above its pre-crisis trend at the worst of the health crisis, came back to it. To be precise, it was in September 2021 a little higher than its pre-crisis trend. The fourth finding is that at any time the deviations in the share of transactions carried out online compared to the pre-crisis trend is positively correlated with mobility restrictions and government spending, but negatively correlated with GDP per capita. Finally, last observation, the differences between subsectors are very clear with regard to the persistence of online payments. For department stores, electric appliances, bars, restaurants, and drugstores, the authors note a persistent increase in the share of online payments. On the other hand, this share is in persistent slight decline for certain service sectors, such as recreation or utilities. The authors interpret this by the fact that gyms, for example, remained penalized by COVID in September 2021, and that the renewal of subscription, often done online, were perhaps still impossible. They also point to the fact that health restrictions had little reason to influence the way to pay utility bills, which were already done a lot online or by mail. Overall, the authors emphasize that the slight change in consumption habits compared to the pre-crisis trends does not reconcile well with the narratives that could be found everywhere in the press. Nevertheless, there are still sectors for which e-commerce has been boosted by the pandemic, that is to say that it has grown even faster than before the pandemic. This is particularly clear for department stores, healthcare or clothing stores, which are sectors where digitization was not particularly strong before the crisis. But this doesn't say whether the surge in online sales came from new customers or from old customers who would simply change their consumption habits. Thank you for listening and talk to you soon.
All comments and analysis reflect CPR AM views on market conditions and its evolution. according to information known at the time. As a result of the simplified nature of the information contained in this document, that information is necessarily partial and incomplete.